"2014 marks the 100-year anniversary of Hermann Park, one of our city's best known and most beloved parks." George H. Hermann, a local industrialist and real estate investor, was one of Houston's first park commissioners. He donated land for the park in June of 1914. Upon his death later that year, more land was bequeathed from his estate. At that time, the area was heavily forested, extending to Brays Bayou and with little development. Today, the park is nestled in between the Texas Medical Center, the Houston Museum District, Rice University, and diverse residential neighborhoods. In 1915, the city commissioned renowned St. Louis landscape architect George Kessler to develop a master plan for the park. Many of his design elements remain today: the main entrance, the reflection pool, the Grand Basin, now McGovern Lake, the music pavilion, now Miller Outdoor Theater, the paths and trails, and the golf course. In 1923, the Kansas City firm Hermann took on the project for the next 25 years. It added new elements like the zoo and the garden center. In the 1960s, the new Houston Museum of Natural Science and Miller Outdoor Theater were constructed, creating a place where Houstonians could fill their weekends in one location. Many Houstonians have fond memories of Hermann Park.
Well, Hermann Park has been very special to my husband and I. We started coming to the park in the early 1960s, and we came over to walk and to play tennis on some old concrete courts that used to be across from the zoo on Hermann Drive. And we used to walk around what was the lake area, and were chased by geese. They were ferocious, and if you came in their territory, you had to run because they literally attacked you. We used to come over to the lake before it was improved, and we knew all the bass holes, and we knew where to find them, and you would usually find a large bass sitting in the hole. It was wonderful.
I've been coming to Hermann Park here, I guess you could say, over close to 30 years. We used to run up the hill and roll down the hill and just have a great time. It's a beautiful place to visit. And now I take my kids here, my son and daughter. We visit the park frequently. As a matter of fact, today when I told them I'm going to Hermann Park, they were like, yay!
And we all enjoy having picnics and riding the train. And it's a really nice place to bring your family and have lots of fun.
I had so many experiences with coming out to the park and meeting people. And the one that I have heard many times is when I was talking to a family, and they would almost all the time tell me, well, we come out to the park because my mother and daddy brought me to the park. And we rode the train, and so that's why I bring my family out here. And a lot of them really didn't have space to take their family.
I first started coming out here, well, it was just about seeing its best days. I mean, it wasn't, the city had so many parks that they was trying to renovate, take care of until they just didn't have time to, didn't have the money either to spend on one particular park.
The park was in terrible shape in '91. The ground was bare, the tree canopy was really just severely reduced, and the reflection pool, I don't know if you remember it, but even my dog wouldn't swim in the reflection pool. It was literally a mosquito-infested bog with Cheeto wrappers floating around in the muck.
Beginning in the early 1990s, several community groups began working to revitalize Hermann Park, which had fallen into disrepair. There were two groups just adjacent to the park. One, the residents of the Warwick Towers, had a wonderful view of the park, and they began collecting money for improvements. A second group, led by Marvin Taylor, a retired postal worker from the 3rd Ward, formed to become the runners, walkers, and joggers of Hermann Park. In 1992, these two groups joined forces with others to create the Friends of Hermann Park, which later changed its name to Hermann Park Conservancy to reflect its mission to improve the park and to conserve and steward its resources.
We sprang from very small seeds. We said, you know, we must put ourselves together. We went out raising money. We went up and down the streets and got $100 from here and there, and it was really a lot of fun.
After a conversation with Marley Lott in 1992, Houstonian Bill Coates decided it was time to take action, saying,
I want you to put your actions where your words are, and let's try to do something about Hermann Park.
My favorite memory of Hermann Park actually starts outside of Hermann Park. It's a conversation about 20 years ago between Jay Baker and me, and it started, as many good conversations do, at the Alabama Ice House over a few beers. It was about the recent and very unexpected death of a friend of ours.
I approached the dean of the school, a guy named Jack Mitchell, who was a well-admired guy and one of the early members of the Friends of Hermann Park, and I asked him what I should focus on as head of the RDA. And he looked at me in a very measured way and said, "Fix Hermann Park."
It's hard to think back to 1991 when the Conservancy got started and what it was like trying to convince people to give money to a public park. Everybody's reaction when I started work here was, well, shouldn't the city be paying for the park's upkeep? I'm a taxpayer, why should I give money? And yes, in a perfect world, we would have a tremendously funded park system, but it's really taking people coming together in the city to decide that our public parks are important and worth supporting.
Why don't we have a competition, a design competition, to rebuild what Jack Mitchell called the heart of the park. He said the piece between the Sam Houston Monument and the lake was the most important part of the park. If you could get that fixed, you could then begin to fix everything. Amazingly enough, they actually put on a design competition, and it was wildly successful.
We got 117 entries from 26 states. And in November of '92, the jury, which was an all-star jury, sat at the top of what was then the Warwick Hotel overlooking the site, and they picked a winner.
The master plan developed, and it was really amazingly insightful and far-sighted, but also really scary in terms of the thought of how much money you'd have to raise to do it.
There were a lot of people in town who just really felt strongly that the park needed improvement and that they were willing to pitch in and participate to try to help make that happen.
Reader's Digest Fund had a program out there to give a couple of $1 million to, I think it was 5 cities. It could have been less than that. And we applied for it, and they came to Houston, and we are the only group where the mayor, the only city where the mayor met with the representatives from the Reader's Digest. So we got a multi-million-dollar grant, and that pretty much put us on the map in Houston. Our first project was not a sexy project. It was 84 bathrooms behind Miller Theater. We spent our first multi-million-dollar amount of money on building bathrooms because there were very few bathrooms in this park that weren't behind paywalls, you know, behind institutional walls.
Hermann Park serves an estimated 6 million visitors a year on its 445 acres. With over 8,000 trees, many over a century old, the park provides a beautiful, cool atmosphere for visitors and a wildlife habitat for local animals.
I was actually born right down the street at Hermann Hospital. That little train was the first train that I rode on. Of course, it was much older. And we spent a lot of time at the zoo, and it's just a great place to hang out. We went to some concerts at the Miller Outdoor Theater, Peter Frampton, and some other concerts, and it's been great.
I think my favorite memory would be bringing my own grandkids out here, grandchildren. is to see them walking by the reflection pool and by the lake and with little restaurants there on the lake. And just being in the park, you can see them, their eyes light up and they want to come here. Papa, take me out to the park.
Yes, we really like riding the train. We came here to take family pictures for Thanksgiving holiday cards and everything, so we really love Hermann Park.
Well, I've been coming out here for all my life, going to the zoo and going to the Miller Outdoor and just walking around the park, and it's changed a lot. It's really come about in the last probably 5 or 6 years. They really put a lot back into the park and the train, and now I bring my kids out here, and it's always a pleasant experience.
The park looks great. Everything looks really good out here. From the pond with the ducks and all the animals to the actual park itself. On the other side, everything looks really nice. The train couldn't look better.
Hermann Park Conservancy has been working in partnership with the City of Houston to build out the master plan for the park. And to date, we've raised over $115 million, about half of that coming from public funds and the other half coming from private investment, large foundations, individuals, as well as some corporate gifts. The Conservancy has been working hard the last 20 years to put the physical pieces of Hermann Park back together. But when you think about 100 years and how beautiful the park is now, we wanted something really special to celebrate. Art in the Park has been a really fantastic project because now you come into the park and you discover a work of art, and maybe somebody isn't comfortable going to museums, so they see the art here, but it also helps them see the park in a different way.
Most recently, we like to take the train around and see all the artwork. It makes the train even more fun for adults, not just for the children, but it's fun for me to go.
I like a tunnel.
The tunnel. And we like to go in the new artwork in the tunnel. We like to see that.
The Kite Festival was just one of my favorite days in Hermann Park. It was so much fun to see all these little kids getting a kite up in the air for the first time. The weather was beautiful and just so many people being happy all in one place. It was really pretty special. The Port of Houston will also be 100 years old this year, and so one thing that we're doing to celebrate both the Park Centennial and the Port Centennial is to have a park-to-port bike ride. There are all these incredible new trails going in along the bayou, in our case, Bray's Bayou, and so we'll be riding from the park 10 miles out to Brady's Landing. There'll be fire boats shooting off colored water. We'll have cupcakes and turn around and come back to the park. We'll be culminating the Centennial year with the opening of the McGovern Centennial Gardens, which is a beautiful 8-acre garden with a series of different garden rooms, including a wonderful rose garden with antique and heritage roses which bloom all year, an arid garden so we can show Houstonians how you can grow really beautiful blooming plants that don't require a lot of water, and a family garden which will have fruits and vegetables and herbs, and we can show children that food comes from the ground. When you enter the Centennial Gardens, you'll look down this wonderful football field in a third long Centennial green with these gorgeous perennial borders on either side. And in the distance is a new 30-foot tall mount with a water cascade coming down the front, and an ADA accessible path going all the way up to the top where you'll be able to get a beautiful view over the gardens. Thanks to George Hermann's generous gift a century ago, Hermann Park Conservancy and today's donors and volunteers, Hermann Park continues to serve Houston's diverse population, providing a natural sanctuary in this bustling city.
But you meet people every day who tell you something about this park that they have experienced. Some of them are native Houstonians, some of them are not native Houstonians, but it brings back memory to a lot of people. They talk about Hermann Park, and the Conservancy is making this more available to people around than they ever have been.
When I think about the work the Hermann Park Conservancy has done over the last 20 years, I really can't help but think it's a miracle. Truly, a miracle of community engagement at every level. We have our board volunteers, we have the 20,000 hours per year of volunteers out in the park, and all coming together to make this place a magic place for people to come visit.